Thank you for joining us. I'm Richard Curie. On behalf of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival at the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, I want to welcome you all to Beyond the Mall 2021, Making Matters. We look forward to connecting with you on our digital platforms as master artisans, cooks, sculptors, and musicians from as far away as Armenia and Fiji, Peru and Cuba, right here in Washington, D.C., welcome us into their kitchens and studios to share stories and skills. Together, we'll learn about Zapotec textile dyeing, Senegalese metalsmithing, Korean home cooking, and much, much more. This weekend is a future-facing reflection of the festival's legacy, making community no matter the circumstance, no matter the time. As we have every year since 1967, we offer sincere thanks to all of those who open their creative lives to us to share with us. And we hope that you take inspiration from their stories and find collective care, particularly this year, in the sharing. Thank you.
Welcome to Samgyetang, Korean ginseng soup across generations, part of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival's Beyond the Mall, Making Matters weekend. Thank you for joining us. Live real-time captioning and American Sign Language interpretation are available during today's live program. To view the simulcast that includes these services, please use the link provided in the comments section. If you are viewing this program after the live broadcast, please note that it will also be made available on our website with closed captioning. We'll be taking your questions and comments in the live chat, so please participate. This program is part of the festival's American Ginseng Local Knowledge Global Roots project, which received federal funding from the Asian Pacific American Initiative Pool, administered by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center. If you don't know the festival, I encourage you to check out festival.si.edu to learn more about our programs, education resources, and more. My name is Grace Tahe Kwan, and I'm a curatorial assistant at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. Today's program is a look into a traditional Korean cuisine called samgyetang, a chicken and ginseng soup. It is believed that eating this hot dish during the summer months gives one a cooling effect, which is also known as iyar, which literally means to relieve heat with heat. Samgyetang is most often consumed during the 3 days that mark the hottest period of the summer. Chobok, the beginning of the hottest period, Jungbok, which marks the middle, and Malbok, the end of this period. This year, Chobok falls on Sunday, July 11th, so make sure you make yourself a pot in just 2 weeks. You can find the recipe on our festival blog. Now I would like to welcome our guests, Chefs Yesun and Danny Lee. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, welcome Yesun and Danny, and thank you so much for being with us here today. Could you please take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Danny Lee. I'm the co-chef and co-owner of Mandu Restaurant here in the city, as well as Anju and the Chaiko restaurants, which we have around the area, and actually one in San Diego as well. And this is my mother.
Yes, I'm Danny's mother and also co-owner and chef at Mandu Restaurant. My name is Yesun Lee.
Thank you so much for coming to share your experiences with us today. This program is connected to a larger project on the cultivation and the conservation of American ginseng. Some of the research has been dedicated to the Korean American community because ginseng is a really important root in Korean cooking and herbal medication. Here you can see a picture of some ginseng roots being sold in a Korean outdoor market. There's the picture right there. Um, how would you describe the flavor, and how have you been using it in your restaurants and at home?
Well, ginseng, is
Mhm.
it's a medicinal root, or has been used as a medicinal root. So it has a very obviously earthy and bitter flavor. But if you know how to cook it or know how to steep it, for a tea, you're able to get a beautiful flavor out of that root.
Yeah, for tea, you could add a little bit of honey. That'll make it really, tasty tea.
But with any root, if you just gently boil for quite some time, for instance, like in samgyetang, you're able to get rid of some of the bitterness and replace it with a softer texture, and you're able to get a very nice balanced flavor out of that root.
Have you guys ever made this tea at your restaurants?
When Mandu first opened, we tried experimenting with that. Again, this was in 2006, and even though it seems pretty recent in terms of the perception of Korean food and the knowledge of Korean food, and the general, American market wasn't what it is now. And I think it was a bit ambitious of us to give complimentary ginseng tea to some of our guests, and that did not go over too well. So it was kind of a waste on our part, so we stopped doing that. But that's something I think we could explore again. Again, I think it's has a lot of health properties that I think people now especially would enjoy. But back then, it wasn't a hit, to say the least.
Yesin, do you use ginseng at home as well?
Yes, of course. I use a lot. But about ginseng, you should like the bitterness.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is some bitterness. You cannot get rid of the bitterness totally. You should get familiar with that taste.
Yeah, but at home you make some John sometimes.
John, yes, John. Yeah, but
So,
it's a little challenging.
so John, for those of you who aren't familiar, is more of it's the general term for a Korean pancake. But I remember as a kid, she would make a ginseng pancake, basically.
And how do you guys make that pancake?
You should flatten, and like other patties, you just dip with some eggs and flour.
And then do you grill it on a pan? Or
Yes, yes.
that sounds really good.
Not the most technical recipe she just gave everyone right there, but
So I think what she's saying is that you flatten the ginseng root,
Yeah.
and then you dip it in an egg batter.
Egg batter.
yeah, with a little bit of flour,
Flour
egg
first.
batter, and then you pan fry it. So in Korean cuisine, pancake can be misleading. Sometimes it actually means a pancake. Other times it means any ingredient that is coated in a seasoned flour, dipped in a egg batter, and then pan fried. So the egg forms a coating around that ingredient, kind of a crispy egg coating, which is the pancake. I guess.
Like a patty.
Yeah.
That's a ginseng patty.
Yeah.
But you should
Well-
appreciate the bitterness first. Otherwise, you wouldn't like it.
We do have a question from the audience. Arlene asks, do you eat the pancakes with anything?
It's more of like a snack. In terms of like, there's a dipping sauce you can use with it, which
Yes.
is generally
Soy
soy,
base.
sesame seeds, some sesame oil, some vinegar, sometimes some gochugaru, Korean chili flake, and scallion. But no, John typically is something you eat just as a kind of in between meal snack. There's also like on rainy days, you
Or
typically
you can
see
put
Koreans
on the
making John,
table in a banchan, one
Yeah.
of the banchan or appetizer.
like a side dish.
Yes.
And eat it with rice.
Mhm.
So another way that both of you use samgyetang use ginseng is also in samgyetang. So we had the privilege of observing you guys cook different styles of samgyetang at your restaurant, Mandu. So let's watch a short video of this process and then we'll come back to this discussion.
Okay.
My name is Yesun Lee. I was born in Seoul, Korea in 1946, and I moved to United States to study. My daughter told me, why not opening Korean restaurant in DC? There are so many other ethnic restaurants, but somehow no Korean restaurant, not even a single one. And that's how we started Mandu. Sam means ginseng, ge means chicken, tang means soup. Start with filling the cavity of this Cornish hen.
It's a chicken soup where in the States we use Cornish hen, stuffed with sweet rice, garlic, jujubes, but the most important ingredient is ginseng.
Black pepper.
Samgyetang to me is what I crave when I'm just generally just not feeling good. It could be mentally or physically. It provides me with a lot of comfort, mainly due to the nostalgia of my mother cooking it for me when I was growing up. When I say growing up, I mean from birth till now. In terms of heritage, samgyetang is one of the most important dishes in Korean cuisine. It showcases time. Just cooking used to mean a way to have a business.
We're gonna have a little bit of soy sauce here.
As I've gotten older, I wanted to learn more about my family's heritage, being Korean, also being cognizant that I'm also Korean American. I grew up in a very white neighborhood, white schools, predominantly white friends. So besides church growing up, I wasn't really exposed to much about Korean culture except for what my mom cooked. So cooking for me has taken a more important social and cultural role.
All right, we're gonna start our process with making juk, Korean rice porridge.
I think a lot of Korean people hesitate to come into the city, serving the food to foreigners. But I think you should feel free. It's good to introduce your own food to other culture.
So DC has always been a very special place to me. It will always be home. Being born here, I'm very attached to the city. I'm very protective of the city. DC has gone through a lot. It's gone through a lot of social change, a lot of social movements, a lot of protests. As the city has gone through those different periods, I think it strengthens our city. Through food and through restaurants, we're able to promote the beauty of our culture, the beauty of bringing together strangers. It's not lost on me that we have popular Asian restaurants that people look to see what we're going to say or what we do. Racism affects all communities. So the best thing I can do using the platforms that I've been given is to promote awareness as much as possible. Korean food can still be presented in a different way, can still progress while still being classified as Korean. We're utilizing old classic recipes as the building blocks of some of these dishes and restaurants, and just putting little tweaks on them with local produce or different proteins that weren't utilized or found in Korea, but it's rooted in the fundamentals of Korean cuisine. So in my mind, how is that anything but Korean?
There we have our samgyetang juk.
To me, cooking is not only to make your stomach full, but it also has to make you happy.
Looking back on it and looking through my career and my influences, there's no stronger influence than my mother. The way she preps food and the way she would build these dishes for our family, I was always in the kitchen and smelling and watching and learning. And I utilize those skills and those memories to this day.
Wow, that made me really hungry. So Danny, let's talk about the samgyejuk that you made in the video. And you made it using the samgyetang that your mother had cooked already.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of the rice porridge that you made using the broth and the chicken from your mother's dish. Um, no, it's the other one. No, oh, sorry. Go back. Sorry, that was my fault. That's my fault. Yeah. So this is the dish that you made using your mother's broth and the chicken from her samgyetang. Can you tell us more about this juk, Danny?
Yeah, so juk is something that every Korean has grown up with. Juk, it means rice porridge, and typically, especially when you're a kid, when you have a stomach ache or you have a cold, your mother would make you juk. And I've become obsessed with cooking juk and finding ways to impart more flavor into that porridge. And samgyetang juk is something that we make at home all the time with leftover samgyetang. So basically, we would season the rice with the broth, which is flavored with not only ginseng, but obviously a lot of chicken and garlic especially. So you have this fortified chicken stock that you can cook the rice in, and then using the pulled chicken from the samgyetang as well, you can really mix that into the porridge and it shreds up really nicely. And then to finish it off, I loved soft cooked eggs, so that's called a 6-minute egg that you see in that photo. And the yolk really helps enrich that porridge as well, and some crispy garlic and some crispy nori on top of that as well.
That looks really good. We have a couple questions from the audience. One from Sarah is asking, is ginseng also used in any Korean dishes that are meant to be consumed in the winter or in cooler months?
Not really. I mean,
that I heard of.
Yeah, the dish that it is known for is what we are talking about right now. It is samgyetang. If not tea,
Or alcohol.
Yeah,
Alcohol.
Akko?
is a year-round.
Insamju.
Insamju. It's basically soju that's steeped with ginseng for a very, very long time. Typically when you go to a Korean household, you'll see like on a mantle, this with this huge ginseng root in it, and no one ever touches it. It's just meant there to show off and be like, hey, I've had this for 100 years, but no one dares drink it. So I don't think I've ever had it before. We tried to make it, but we just lost patience and we just started drinking it. But in terms of like a super aged insamju, I don't think I've ever tried.
Sometimes they put in really hard liquor. Yeah. Instead of soju, you can put in any alcohol you like to.
Yeah. But to answer the question, even though samgyetang is known to be a popular summer dish because you want to beat the heat with heat, that is also a dish that can be eaten year-round, especially in the winter, especially to prevent a cold, which a lot of people think it helps with as well. So again, it can be year-round.
I also eat it during the winter time. I think especially when I have a cold, I think it's really good for kind of, I don't know, it gives me more energy, I think, right?
Yeah.
And
really general congestion and nasal congestion. If you eat samgyetang, you go to bed, the next morning you feel great.
Yeah, great. We have another question from Sarah. Sorry, not from Sarah, from Cleo, who asks, do you have any tips for picking out the best ginseng at the grocery store?
Not many you're not going to find ginseng in many grocery stores. Typically, you should go to an Asian market like H Mart. Recently, when I was there, you can find a whole root that's typically by itself that's just wrapped. You can tell that it's a really fresh ginseng root that they're able to get, and typically you want to find the ones that you can tell were, farmed and responsibly and picked and then delicately packaged, as opposed to the more commodity dried ginseng that can, order off, whatever website that comes sealed in, bags. But typically, if you go to H Mart, you can find those really
I
unique
think
long roots.
Yeah, it's a ginseng product are really controlled by Korean government. So you have to look at the label before you purchase ginseng.
Going back to the samgyejuk, so there's a similar contemporary version of samgyetang that you make at your restaurant at Anju, which uses a roasted chicken instead of a stewed one. Could you tell us more about this dish and why you chose to prepare it this way?
Yeah, so I was talking with our executive chef Angel and our sous chef James at Anju about a version of samgyetang that we could do there, and we talked about what are our favorite elements of samgyetang besides chicken, right? And the common thing that kept on rising was the broth and the rice. So we wanted to make a really good sweet rice infused with ginseng and garlic and jujubes and pine nuts. And that's what we did. So we basically treated the chicken and the rice and the broth separately. So we cooked the sweet rice in a fortified chicken stock that had all the flavors of a samgyetang, and then we took half a Cornish hen and roasted it to get a really crispy skin, as you see in that picture, and just placed it on top of there. So in a way, it was, I guess, kind of a deconstructed idea of a samgyetang, but all the flavors were there, where we were able to put our own little unique spin on that dish, which is, what we generally lean to do at Anju.
And Yesin, what do you think about Danny's dish?
That's a tough question. But I like it. The way a new creation of Korean food. What? Actually, honestly, I haven't tried it yet. It looks so good, but I'm gonna try it. It looks. And the main idea is there, because sticky rice there and some soup there. So I think it might attract to some people the roasted chicken.
That's one of the nicest things she's ever said about.
Oh. No, I'm so proud of him. He's
we have a question from Helen who asks, can you share whether you two have had any disagreements in the kitchen because of the generational gap?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, when we first opened up Mandu in 2006, the original plan was for me to be out front and my mom to be in the kitchen, right? And very quickly we realized that we needed to work together in the kitchen for numerous issues. And that's when we started to get in some severe arguments, but that's also when we started to get better. And I think it was the melding of the recipes that my mother had learned in Korea growing up from her mother and her grandmother, and that she learned here cooking for our family. My upbringing, being born in the States, growing up on her food, but also, being a little bit more westernized, living in America and being Korean American, having those two worlds collide at Mandu, I think provided us with a pathway to find some success. But again, there were a lot of disagreements, and to this day, we disagree on several food items. I mean, Anju only opened up a little bit less than 2 years ago, and even then, opening day, we were getting into arguments about the food. That will never stop.
No, but my main focus is just to come up with delicious, tasty food, no matter how creative you are, how you present the food. If the taste is there, it'll be great. People will come to eat. But, funny story, Danny once told everyone when we had some kind of conversation with other group of people, and we had some disagreement and some kind of differences. And his answer was, That's why I'm opening another store. That's how he opened Chaiko and Andrew. But through the differences, we can always grow together and come up with the new dishes.
Yeah, that's definitely a true story.
Yeah.
I remember when I said that.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. So you are the first Korean restaurant in the DC area, well, in DC, inside of DC proper. And so, what has it been like being the first Korean restaurant in DC? And how has the area changed? And has that affected your approach to cooking at all?
So again, we opened up Mandu in 2006, and prior to that, there were a couple Korean restaurants, but not strictly serving Korean cuisine. There was a Korean barbecue restaurant that also had a sushi bar. There's a takeaway that also had Chinese food and like hamburgers on the menu as well. So we were the first restaurant to strictly focus on Korean cuisine in a full service setting. And that put a huge microscope on us because, again, even though it doesn't seem too long ago, the Korean food and Korean terms weren't as ubiquitous as they are now. Like now, if you walk down to Safeway or Giant, to a generic grocery store, you can find kimchi, you can find gochujang, which is crazy to me. I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's nuts for us to see that. It also makes us proud, that Korean food is being recognized and is more marketable, I guess is the best way to put it. But again, when we opened up in 2006, there was a huge magnifying glass on us, and that we definitely felt the pressure, and we definitely succumbed to the pressure for the first few months. But then as we started to work together and get better and improve the restaurant, I think that pressure turned into more of a responsibility that we felt to get better so that we could promote not just Korean food, but through the restaurant, promote Korean culture as well. And that was very important to us. And that's still part of our mission.
So speaking of when it was really difficult to find Korean foods, we have a question from Kim who asks, was it hard to find Korean ingredients when you first came to the DC area? And this one's specifically for Yesun.
That was not the issue because, in year 2006, there were already lots of Korean supermarkets.
No, they're talking about when you first, in 1970.
1970, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. When I was at school, in Urbana-Champaign, there was only one Asian market. The owner was a Japanese lady. She constantly visited Chicago to get some product to sell for the students. So very small store, not even grocery store. So it was hard. But once I moved to DC, year 1974, we didn't have like a big supermarket like H Mart or Lotte. I remember there was only one store called Korea House in Arlington. Yeah, and another place called the Kimchi on Wilson Avenue or Wilson Street?
Wilson Boulevard.
Wilson Boulevard in Arlington. I remember only those two were some Asian markets in the 70s.
I'm actually doing some research into the Korean American, like the early Korean Americans in the DC area. And I came across Korea House, and that was according to my research, the first Korean supermarket to open up in the DC area, specifically Korean. So that was really fun to hear about that. So then how did you cook if you couldn't really find any Korean ingredients?
You can always substitute as long as you have some spices like soy sauce, made Korean, main spices. I mean, the seasonings of soy sauce, gochujang, sesame oil. So You can substitute the vegetables, and meat's always there, and fishes you can, use any kinds of fish. So it wasn't hard actually.
That's fantastic. Yes, and so now you kind of cook for a much more diverse audience. So how do you approach cooking food at Mandu or even at home for a broader audience?
Hmm.
I think we can answer that by looking back to when we first opened, and the menu was tiny. We were definitely playing it safe, but also we didn't want to put ourselves in a position where we would, create this elaborate, large menu and fail. But also we were scared that, the general DC population, wouldn't order some of the items that we really wanted to put on the menu.
Remember, you had to put all the details on each.
Yeah,
items,
like
right?
bibimbap,
Yeah.
right? Back then,
But,
like no one knew what
no
bibimbap
one
was,
knew.
so we had to write, it is a harmonious bowl of steamed rice with, separately prepared vegetables, and gochujang, which is a Korean fermented chili paste, and the description was like half the menu page long just for bibimbap.
You had to explain everything there.
And I think that has gotten easier as time's gone on because of the moments that Korean food has had over the past 15 years, where it is now. It makes our job a little bit easier where we don't have to explain as much, which also means that we could, in terms of a broader audience, we can expand from bibimbap, expand from bulgogi, and, serve dishes like tteokbokki, right? Or talk about samgyetang, for instance, right? For us, that's really important to showcase really, the true beauty of Korean cuisine and how vast it is, and how different varieties, of the cuisine. And people seem to be very curious about that. So we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, one funny story was like, for instance, tteokbokki. We had some argument because, when I came to this country first time, no American friends had a the rice cake, right? So I just remember 1970s, nobody appreciated rice cakes. So but of course, when Danny and Jean grew up, of course, I served them some rice cake. They loved it. But I just thought that they are just my kids. That's why they liked it. But Danny was insisting we have to put tteokbokki on our menu. And then I said, nobody would like it.
No, that's not what you said. You thought,
what did I say?
You said that non-Koreans would not know how to eat chewy rice cakes, and you would thought they would choke and die at the restaurant.
Yeah, and then Danny says,
that is actually the reason wwhy she didn't want to put tteokbokki on the menu.
Yeah, I was scared. And then what Danny's response was, I'm American. So that's what he said. Okay, then let's try. And then, when we served the first night, I really looked very carefully, watched the customers, how they chew and how they ate.
Yeah, she was looking up like how to do the Heimlich maneuver.
Yeah, but now, see the generation, it's all generational stuff. My generation, they didn't appreciate, other culture, ethnic food. It wasn't exposed that much. But now, younger generations, they like to experience all different ethnic culture and food.
I think that's true across all cultures, right?
Yeah.
When you're introducing a different cuisine, especially in the States, you're gonna, like, for instance, if you go to a Korean restaurant with a group of non-Koreans, right, and someone who's not Korean orders like a spicy jjigae, right? Usually the ajumma, or like the older Korean woman who's serving you, will talk to the non-Korean and be like, "Oh, it's spicy. Like, are you sure you want this? It's really spicy." And they're like, "Yeah, we know what this is. It's fine. I can handle spice."
You can handle it.
And they're like, "Really? Like, you actually like it?" And I think it's cute in a way because it's, they're excited that non-Koreans are venturing out and ordering these types of dishes. But I also think it's very bizarre whenever that reaction happens. It's very common too,
Yeah.
but just
Another
know, it's
example, another example is if you come to Mandu, the way we serve bibimbap is totally different from other Korean restaurants. Because when we opened, we were not sure how many, the other, the ethnic group of people, they know about the Korean food and Korean vegetables. So that's how we served. That's why we serve all those vegetables on the side. Usually it's on top of the rice, right? But they could pick if they never, they never tasted any soybean sprout, they wouldn't eat it. So that's why we put everything on the side. So we still do it, right?
Yeah, I was going to say we stopped doing that.
We better stop now. It's known, so we're going to stop doing it now.
We don't do that anymore.
See? Oh yeah, so that's how we did, but like more than 10 years.
Well, no, that we did after the regular bibimbap, which was different than a dolsa, right?
Yeah.
So dolsa, obviously everything went on top, because that's why you have it in the hot bowl. But we also served a more room temperature version of the bibimbap, which some people have an affinity towards, and that is when we would put the vegetables on the sides that you could really mix it, almost like a DIY bibimbap kit at your table.
That's great. That's making me so hungry right now. We have another question from Marjorie. Danny, despite having some generational culinary disagreements, do you turn to your mom for cooking advice? And for Yesun, do you learn also from Danny?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I talk to her all the time about advice on Korean cooking. I mean, there's no better resource that I could possibly have than her, in terms of what I do for my living. So I turn to her all the time about, especially if I'm thinking about a dish, especially for mandu, which, we are, the ethos of mandu is to be as, classic as possible in terms of preparation of Korean food. And I'll think about a dish, that she made during my childhood, and I'll just call her and be like, hey, remember when you used to make this? Like, how did you do it? Because I need to learn how to replicate that at the restaurant. And there's no recipe I can find online. There's not, it's just that intangible, like, mother's touch that I remember that I want other people to experience that joy and that taste, and the only way I can do is by asking her.
Yeah, same with me. Same goes with me. Whenever I try to make something new or another new dish, I always ask him to taste first. I have to get his approval first.
Oh my God.
Does he always approve?
Well, modify sometimes. Yeah, we always, find the, point where we can modify.
The happy middle.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
She is
interesting.
extremely competitive. So, yeah. So, when we first opened up Chaiko, this is a funny story. So,
What did I do?
my business partners and co-chef Scott and I created something called Chaiko salt. It's kind of like a house seasoning. And we had a couple of cooks who worked at Mandu and Chaiko. So they were kind of like spies from my mom, right? So they would come back. They would come back to Mandu, and my mom would be like, "Hey, what are those guys doing at Chaiko?" They're like, "Oh, they created this thing called Chaiko salt, which goes on a lot of the dishes, just like a finishing salt." And I remember, like, after a month, I was able to come back to Mandu to work a shift there, and then I look on the line, and then there's this like container of like the seasoning I'd never seen before, and I was like, "What is this?" And all the cooks were cracking up, and my mom's like, "Oh, that's Mandu salt." And I was like, "What is Mandu salt?" She was like, "It's like Chaiko salt, but way better." And I was like, "Oh my God."
Mine's better. But, I put more Korean ingredient there.
That's fantastic. So then the workers, they kind of get in on it as well into the competition.
Oh, I know. I mean, they get a kick out of lighting that fire.
That's really funny. So we're kind of twisting into a more serious note. So, as many of you know, there's been an increase in anti Asian American violence and sentiment, and this has also affected our area as well. There's been a string of robberies and vandalism to AAPI owned businesses in the DC metro area. Business owners have also been physically attacked. More recently, two Korean American women were attacked with a cinder block at their place of business in Baltimore. So I know, Danny, you're very vocal on social media about the current situation. Can you tell us how you feel about what's happening right now and how you've addressed this issue?
Yeah. So what's happening right now, first of all, isn't something that just popped out of nowhere, right? What I tell people is that the first thing we have to acknowledge is that this has been a problem for as long as we've been in this country. Okay, this problem against, or this rise in racism against Asian Americans is not new. Anyone who thinks that this just happened because of coronavirus, needs to get their head out of the sand and do some research and really look around, because this is not new. Especially when I think about my childhood, again, growing up in a very, dominantly white neighborhood, I look back to, being in Little League or playing on the soccer teams, and like people saying ching, ching chong ching, and, doing the hot thing with their eyes. Like, that was a routine thing to go through, but it was normal. It seemed it was almost normalized, right? It was normal back then. Like, it wasn't until the 80s where the term Oriental, right? There was a push to get rid of the term Oriental to refer to our race, and it turned to Asian, right, as a gigantic subset. And you think about it, that was only in the 1980s when that happened, right? And so again, my whole point with this is that this has been something that's been building and building and building, and it took something like COVID to really embolden some people who obviously had some of these racist ideologies in their heads, and because of this decided to act out on it and lash out on it, which is why you've seen this increase recently. And I have tried to be as vocal as possible, because Asian Americans have always been, I guess, trained, or we've always thought it was best to keep quiet, always to be docile, not to bring attention to ourselves, not to put a target on our own backs, right? And by being vocal, they thought that we'd expose our communities even more. And I got really sick of that mentality. And I think it's incredibly important for all of us to, number one, acknowledge that there's a problem, because it is a serious problem. And number two, ask for help. And Asian Americans typically also feel that it's uncomfortable to talk about vulnerability. We feel that it is a bad thing to ask for help. And what I'm saying is that we need help. We need every one of us to talk to our own inner circles, talk to our communities, talk to our school districts, right? Talk to our businesses and say, we need to have a conversation. This is not okay. But also work in unity with every other marginalized community, right? Just because there's a focus on the Asian American community right now in terms of racism does not mean that racism stopped affecting every other community, right? And we need to learn from the civil rights movement, right? We need to learn from the women's suffrage movement. We need to learn on how progress can be made, and we need to join with all of these communities in order to beat the ultimate enemy, which is racism in this country, right? And I believe in strength and unity. I believe in the beauty of our diversity in this country. And we need to get to a point where we can be comfortable with that. And, my mom, I always think about my mom with this, because my father moved to this country to eventually have a family and try to achieve the American dream, which they thought moving here from Korea was the melting pot, right? This ideological melting pot of cultures. And to see this now, I think my mom's been incredibly sad about it, but I think she's also been very proud to see not just me, but other Asian American, members of the Asian American community stand up and say enough is enough.
Yasun, so you're, a mother who raised her children in this area and a longtime business person who has seen a lot of changes to DC. How do you feel about the situation that's happening right now?
I just hope this gets better. But when I think of the time I came to this country, 70s, since I came to the school, we actually had advantage of being an Asian or being from different culture, because we were not many. So all the professors and friends, they really tried to help us. That is the big difference. Now there are so many, and so I think both sides, being Asian or being from other country, you are not born here, or you are the second generation, or you're the first generation, whatever it is. I think you have to just respect other people first, whether they are from other country or they are born here, they are white or black. Doesn't really matter. As a human being, just if you start respecting other people and always look for if you can help with anything you have to other people, I think the society will be better off.
And that's one thing that she raised me with was, mutual respect for anyone and everyone. And that's something I really appreciate about my childhood of being her son, is that, she raised me in a way where we'll be as inclusive as we possibly can be as humans, right? Not as Asians, not as Koreans, but as humans. And, our house was like a revolving door. Like anyone was welcome to our house to stay, eat. She would cook for them, or she would have food because she was usually working. She would have food from the night before that I could just heat up. And it was almost like a hotel, like a youth hostel. Like there's so many people stay at that house of all different cultures and backgrounds, and everyone was treated the same with respect.
Danny, could you talk a little bit about your kind of the things that you've been working on to try to bring light to what's happening right now?
Sure. Well, we started off by doing an event at Anju. It was a fundraising dinner for a group called Embrace Race. Embrace Race is a phenomenal group that provides resources to parents and teachers, school districts, counselors. They provide resources to help them educate children at a very young age on matters of anti-bias and anti-racist matters, right? So their whole thought process is, let's try to educate our children, through schools, through videos, books, different types of programming, because these kids are going to grow up to become the future leaders of our society, right? And if we can try to limit or help them with aids so that they don't get influenced by some of the systemic bias that's ingrained in our society, they can grow up without some of those biases in their own heads, right? And I thought it was an amazing organization, amazing mission. And so we put together a dinner at Anju featuring a fairly diverse lineup of chefs. I thought it was important to showcase, again, strength and diversity and strength and unity. And we were able to raise almost $20,000 in one night for Embrace Race. And then there's a group in San Diego that caught wind of that, and they did a 4-week dinner series involving 16 chefs, where I actually flew out for the first one to help them get it kicked off. And I'm continuing to do that. So there's a dinner I'm doing next month at a very well-known restaurant here, where they're also going to donate the proceeds to Embrace Race as well. But besides that, the most important thing I think is just being relentless in our vocalism and using whatever platforms we have to bring awareness to whoever we can reach, that, this continues to be a problem. And that's what we're doing.
That's fantastic. And are there ways that our audience can help support stopping AAPI violence and hate?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I would just do research, right? I would talk to people. I would I mean, there are several prominent, especially on social media now, resources that you could look up. But Embrace Race, is a group that I think is very good, and they do webinars they can register with, monthly, if not a couple times a month, which is really great. But again, I think it just comes down to just the willingness of any individual to do or to spend the time to do their own research on what's happening, right? It's not hard to Google what's happening to the Asian American community right now. So I think it's important for people to just learn.
So Yesun had said that, food plays an integral part in building an understanding of empathy and respect. So do you want to speak to that as our kind of closing remarks?
I mean, the reason we opened up a restaurant in the first place was because my mom was always a phenomenal cook. Like we had a huge
to my kids.
No, we had a huge collection of family friends, right? And we would go to each other's houses. And the story I always tell is that, my mom would always prepare food, and if we're going to someone else's house, so they would ask her to. No one ever dared to bring food to my mom's house, right? They just, that was true. So we were always kind of like this hosting, like I said before, we were always I just grew up in a very kind of hosting environment, very open environment, and we try to bring that philosophy into the restaurant, not just with how we do our service, but through our food. We want people to taste like they're eating in her kitchen.
Yeah, so that's what we studied, like leave family food to your table. That was the main idea, because I'm not the trained chef. I was just a mom, and we used to entertain a lot. So that's the beginning idea. Just let's bring our food to the restaurant.
I think moms are probably the best chefs out there. I think my mom is.
All the moms. It goes to all the moms.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything, and sharing your insights and experiences with us. Speaking back to what we were talking about with AAPI Hate, we have resources at the Smithsonian as well for #stand, and we also will be including this video as part of the resources. So thank you so much for being with us here today and sharing with us everything. Do you want to say bye to our, oh no, wait, not yet. We have to say a couple of things, sorry. I wanted to close by offering thank you to our festival staff, interns, and fellows for their work in support of this program. A special thank you to our guests today, and also Sarah Berry, Christine Han, Sojin Kim, and Christian Oh. This is the final program of Beyond the Mall Making Matters. Thank you to everyone who joined us this weekend. If you missed any events, you can always go back and watch them on our festival website, festival.si.edu, or on Facebook or YouTube. The Folklife Festival will be back on the National Mall in 2022. So get excited for that. Until then, be sure to follow up on social media for updates and our programs, research, and other events. Thank you so much, 감사합니다, Yesun and Danny Lee. This was a fantastic program. And thank you, everybody, for watching us today. Bye.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. All of a sudden, Nick